Welcome back, Rosebuds. We're here with Nicholas Pardi. We have just gone through his first top two priorities in universal basic income and ranked choice voting. We're now on part three of our conversation, where we talk about the decriminalization and legalization of drugs as one of Nick's top priorities. Nick, how did that become one of your top priorities today, and why is it so crucially important that we start advocating for this?
Yeah, so um, I would say that I think this actually fits in very well with the other two priorities we discussed, because the, the like I said in our part one interview about UBI and poverty and whatnot, we're having a huge drug epidemic in our impoverished communities. So where I live, like I said earlier, in our part one, um, the economy is not great. Our local economy is not great, and also the locality I'm in is struggling hugely with opiates, meth, um, you know, terrible things. And you might like think to yourself like, well, okay, well, if we're having these problems, why decriminalize them and or legalize them? Because that might, there's a lot of implications we might think to ourselves. But it became a top priority for me personally because I have a sibling, older sibling, that is, you know, on and off the streets on various illicit substances, and it's personal to me. So so in that regard, that's mainly the reason it's a big priority for me, is because it is deeply personal, and I know it's deeply personal for a lot of people. So, and the main thing that I would like to stress about this is that you can disagree with me on like the move towards decriminalizing or legalizing drugs, but what you can't disagree with me on is that what we are doing right now is not working,
Mm.
and that what the our current process of dealing with this is just, can I cuss on here?
Yeah, of course.
It's fucked. It's
Yeah.
fucked, dude. And I see it personally. There's a lot of issues right now, and even like if we move towards decriminalizing, there's still going to be problems, um, outside of just the substances themselves, but also the care centers. Like, because there's profit motive, there's a lot of shady stuff that goes on, and I could, talk about that with further questions. But yeah, so that's my priority. It's deeply personal to me, and um, yeah, we need to change something. We need to get to work
I
on it.
I strongly agree with you both on the system itself currently not working. I think we have seen that with, I think, drugs overdoses rising to, I think, the number three cause of death in America currently. And we've specifically been seeing that around opioids itself. One thing I wanted clarity from you is I think the positions of decriminalizing and legalizing have different implications. And I'm curious where
Yes,
you fall
yes.
between decriminalization versus legalization, and also what drugs specifically each of those applies to.
Yeah, so first I want to say that um, the yes, the difference between decriminalizing and legalizing is very important. And I think firstly, we should move towards decriminalizing and not legalizing, because I think we need to start addressing this problem and working with it, and not just throwing solutions, or like not just attempting to okay, what will happen if we just legalize it all, right? So that's a terrible idea. So I think we should decriminalize first. And in terms of what substances, all of them.
All of
Um,
them. Okay.
like for a person, like I don't want, dealing the drugs still illegal. Um, in terms of meth, opiates, and whatnot. Yeah, that should be illegal, because the the biggest harm is that it's in criminals. Okay, you know what? Yeah, it's in the criminal world, the black market world, and in terms of harm reduction, there's there's no space for that. There's no space for harm reduction in our current system that we have. So I think it starts with decriminalization and potentially legalization. I think it's not um, it's not something we shouldn't consider. But I think for right now, in terms of building a consensus and um, and a movement, we should start with decriminalizing all drugs, um, and just stop treating drug addicts like criminals, but more people that have a health issue and need help.
I think that makes a ton of sense to me too. I personally grapple between the legalization and decriminalization points of view. I think the appeal of decriminalization to me is that you're not just transferring hands of who is owning this and dealing this. So instead of having the black market creating all of these products for people to then use, you're just now saying, okay, corporate America, you can now be in
Yeah,
charge of making this and have that profit motive be something that's driving them to potentially increase supply. I think we both are recognizing that we're not saying that these drugs aren't bad for people. I think we can recognize that people shouldn't be doing them. We shouldn't be
yes, yeah,
necessarily throwing them away because they choose to do it. But that if it was legalized, there's going to be this incentive to build a profit motive off it and get people to use it more. And decriminalizing it from the use standpoint allows you to go get the help, while not decriminalizing it from the sales point of view gives some incentive for people to not sell it to them in the first place. So I can totally understand that appeal. While on the other hand, legalization, as you had mentioned, has a lot more regulation to it from like
yeah,
an FDA perspective and potentially the pureness of the products compared to having some stuff get mixed into it as well. So I think that is something that really needs to be grappled with. One of the things I wanted to get more clarity from you on is why you think this should be applied to all drugs across the board. Do you think that they should all be removed from being a Schedule One drug? And why do you think it should be all drugs compared to potentially like the marijuanas of the world as someone advocates for?
yeah. I understand your question. The Why I believe it should be for all drugs is because, um, in my view, I think because we view certain drugs as, if this person uses marijuana, they're cool, like that's fine. But if this person uses heroin, that's not good. And there's definitely differences, but I think in order to solve the problems and get people into help and stuff like that, we have to reduce as much stigma as we can. Um, it's very people have to be vulnerable to get help, and if we're treating all of them as criminal offenders, I don't think that's a good environment to encourage um, reaching out and getting help. So in terms of that, I just think we shouldn't. And I also think, um, yeah, for marijuana, legalize that for sure. I mean, I'm all aboard the legalization train for that. But right now I'm talking about just decriminalizing all drugs because we have to. stop putting people in jail and more people in treatment. And we have a treatment problem as well.
Mm.
Um, and because there is a profit motive, I can tell you a anecdotal story. And I do want to clarify it is anecdotal, but I know for sure it happened. In California, my sister, my sister was in rehab, and another rehab facility paid her to relapse and get signed into their program, and that and they do that because now her insurance will pay for this treatment facility, and so now there's all this gaming the system,
Mm.
and that's all due to profit motives. So that's why the legalization aspect of that is scary, but also it's almost like a lose situation where, okay, we're either going to send you to jail or we're going to send you to some treatment center that you can get bribed and relapse and go to another one. I think there's a lot of things we have to do and address in terms of this epidemic, but I think it all starts with, okay, these people are not criminals. Decriminalize the substances themselves so that they are not criminals. There's no official offense. Like, okay, yeah, maybe based on laws it is illegal, but we're not treating them like criminals. That's not what we should do. We focus on fixing the treatment centers, getting these people to help, and then we go from there. That's my perspective on that.
Yeah, I strongly hear you there, and thank you for sharing that anecdote. I think that goes into another complete topic on the
Yes, definitely good.
profit motive of a healthcare system in
Yeah,
general. But with that being said, I wanted to ask one more clarifying question on this point is when it comes to the treatment side of it, one of the things in an Andrew Yang type proposal is that treatment would still be mandatory for the people
yeah,
who are caught with the drug problems. Do you believe that treatment should be mandatory or should it be something that's optional?
yeah. I think um, it's this sort of question can make you kind of go back and forth in your head
Mm,
because on one hand, I want everybody to get help, but on the other hand, okay, we're not throwing them in jail, but we are putting them in a treatment center.
yeah.
Um, is that giving them agency? Now, what I would say is, in terms of either or, I'm going with the treatment centers. I mean, if we have to put them somewhere, let's try and get them help. So that's sort of my stance on it. Like, I do struggle with the fact that, like, okay, we're decriminalizing it, but also you're not allowed to, go back home. You have to go through this mandatory treatment. But I think and there's going to be some people that are like, kind of grossed out by that idea. But I think it might be a necessary evil to mitigate some of these overdoses that we're having, And I would also suggest that we, yeah, I'm in agreement that we can have that happen. We can, if we catch people with this drug, but they go to treatment, I'm cool with that. But I also think we should have safe injection sites and safe consumption sites as well. Because in my worldview, I think um, generally I don't want people dying from drugs. So whether we have to help you administer the drug safely, and if we have to test the drugs for other foreign substances that you are not aware of, I'm for it because I would rather somebody do something and make sure that they don't die than, oh, it's illegal, so if something goes wrong, well, you had it coming. I'm vehemently opposed to that worldview of, well, you got what you deserved, because there's so much variables that goes into the human experience, and we know that there's both nature and nurture involved with people getting addicted to drugs. So I think just saying it's illegal, this is going to happen, sorry about it, is very irresponsible and, in my opinion, unethical and immoral. But um, so yeah, if the police catch somebody with opiates, yeah, I would send them to helpment or to treatment. But also, I think that should be separate, and there should be safe injection sites and consumption sites as
Mm.
well.
Yeah, I mean, I strongly agree with you on this being a complicated question. I go back and forth myself. My personal view, I think, differs a little bit from yours in that I think we shouldn't be having it be mandatory, and I personally think that you have to allow the people to have agency to fail themselves too. We shouldn't be locking them up and forcing them to have to go to a facility. We should be giving them every ability to know that there's a place where they can get care and how this isn't good for them. And personally, I would still confiscate the drugs if they're still found.
Yeah, yeah,
But I don't think the role of giving care should be mandatory. If someone wants to, this is my own opinion even about things like suicide too. If someone wants to have that agency with their own body to self-harm, they should have that ability, as tragic as it is. We should have everything
yeah.
in place for people to feel secure that they can get help and be able to get treatment, and that it's not the best decision for them. And that we shouldn't enable them by just leaving them with the drugs or with the weapon that would make them suicidal. But it shouldn't be criminal or have law enforcement go against them if they use the drugs.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with there actually. But the only thing I would say is, if it's not mandatory, that's fine. But I would say if we catch like a minor
Yeah.
with, say, you know, heroin or meth, I would say we need to get them into treatment as fast as possible. But I mostly agreed with everything you just said. Because the thing is, and we know this, there's studies. I can't cite them off the top of my head, but um, so maybe I shouldn't even say it, but I'm gonna say it. Uh, um, People like drug addicts almost 100% of the time before they get clean will relapse.
Mm.
And I don't know the exact number, but so I'm gonna estimate, and I'm gonna give you a conservative estimate that I know it's higher, but at least 5 times. I know it's beyond that, but for the sake of this information, yeah, people are going to relapse and they're going to do it a lot before they can get clean, and it's just inevitable. So, in a way, you're right that we should also let people fail because some people have to hit the bottom
Mm-hmm.
to see the way up, you know? So yeah, I'm in agreement with you there, actually. That's a good point.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. Sometimes when you get caught, you really haven't realized it's a failure. But once you've been caught maybe multiple times, you start being
Yeah,
like, okay, I have to question my behavior and I want to get treated. Because at the end of the day, you have to be the one who wants to be helped. It's
yeah,
great and all if we say we're going to help you and give you the opportunities to do it. But at the end of the day, after treatment, if you didn't want to be treated, you're probably going to just go back and relapse again. And to your point about children, um, I personally, again would take away the materials from them, and potentially I would have a conversation with parents there, where if they know this behavior is going and they're not willing to get their kids treatment, that should potentially be like a penalty on them. I don't know if it would be jail
yeah,
necessarily, but reckless endangerment of a child is something that comes to mind.
yeah. Because I don't know if throwing them in jail would be beneficial
I don't
to
think so myself. I think that would
the
be even
child.
worse. Like a
Yeah,
parentless home would have even more reason for someone as a child to not have
yeah,
accountability. But I think that's something where you have to work with the parents, saying, here's the treatment options. We would like you to consider them. If not this time, and we find this happening again, we're going to have to consider this potentially an environment of reckless endangerment and have those penalties occur potentially. But with that being said, I just wanted to know, Nick, if there's anything you think the viewers and listeners of this can do to become advocates in this, as well as any things that you think we might have missed in our conversations about universal basic income, ranked choice voting, or the decriminalization of drugs.
Yeah, so first I do want to say something about to this discussion. I think that marijuana and some hallucinogens should be legalized, personally, because of one ending, the mystery of whether or not you bought something and this is actually what you bought. So I'm very familiar with the psychedelic side of this argument, because when we made LSD illegal, we made that specific compound, that structure, that chemical structure, illegal. But now with that, the problem is now that we're running into is that people are like, okay, you made this illegal, but I can buy a research chemical that mimics the exact chemical makeup, except for one small aspect of it. And that small change, can kill somebody, but they'll have the same effects. And that's legal. You can buy it legally. They have to be marketed as not safe for consumption. And in my view, I would rather somebody go through some legitimate source that is tested and we know this is of like 100% this is what you're getting. I want that for people because I know people are going to do it and I don't want people getting hurt. And that's so in terms of like that legalization aspect, I'm 100% for. It's just in terms of like, okay, do I want to legalize heroin so people can buy heroin and meth? No, I will pass on that. But for mushrooms, LSD, those types of hallucinogens, I'm for it. And actually, it's interesting. I think we should go and research these drugs more, because I know mushrooms, they've been doing clinical trials to see if that can help with, say, alcoholism, PTSD for veterans. And the guy who founded AA got sober after he tried LSD. So I think there is some sort of potential that we could possibly harness with this aspect of the drug class. And so I did want to just clarify on that. I think definitely decriminalize all drugs first and forehand, and then, okay, what drugs are actually safe or generally safe if consumed responsibly and do have some medicinal value, which would fall under a different class than class 1.
Yeah.
Or Schedule 1, sorry.
Yeah, I totally agree with both those points, Nick. I am also in favor of decriminalizing hallucinogens and then also making them medically legal as well, to be prescribed by doctors or at least done in trial studies. With that being said, friends, we're now done with our third part. As we've now heard all of Nick's top priorities, I want you all to be able to check us out in our final part 4, where we're going to be answering a couple of your questions that you have submitted. So make sure you all stick around to check that out as well.